organization investigations with a focus on national security and public safety. I want to be clear. Just because you prioritize public safety threats don't mean we forget about everybody else. We will continue to enforce the immigration laws in this country.
A conservative columnist says the mobs in Minneapolis want to dissuade the federal government from enforcing our immigration laws and to distract from the huge Somali immigrant scandal. Chad Groening has more.
Robert Nye is a columnist for the Washington Times. His latest column is entitled, Twin Cities Turbulence is About More Than Immigration.
It's about overthrowing the duly elected American government. These people want to import millions of people. This tips the scales of elections, and not just because they are working to make them all citizens and let them vote. The census count in each state right now lists non-citizens and citizens and makes no distinction. And then congressional districts are allocated according to that.
And Knight revisited the story of former CNN newsman Don Lemon accompanying leftist protesters when they stormed into City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota during a Sunday service on January 19th.
We have charged Mr. Lemon and 3 other people under the FACE Act, which says you can't disrupt church services, among other things.
Knight says the Minnesota mobs have 2 objectives.
Trying to dissuade the federal government from enforcing our immigration laws, and I believe to distract from the huge scandal in Minnesota involving billions in welfare fraud, mostly in the Somali community.
Knight says if they win the midterms, Democrats have big plans. They should be taken seriously. I'm Chad Groening.
Deputies near Mobile, Alabama say a missing family is now considered to be in danger.
Neighbors in the town of Theodore, Alabama, called 911 Saturday when Aurelia Shokak missed work. No one had seen her or her 2 kids since the night before, and Mobile County Sheriff Paul Birch says deputies found troubling things.
It was blood throughout the house, but not large quantities of blood. There was obviously some kind of struggle based on the scene.
Deputies also found clothes strewn about and mattresses missing from beds. They even questioned an ex-boyfriend who is also the father of one of Shokak's children. He provided an alibi. Eben Brown, Fox News.
And finally, more freezing winter weather in the Midwest and South. Katie Byrne has more from Covington, Kentucky.
Parts of Ohio and Kentucky picked up 5 inches from this storm, with fast-moving snow squalls reducing visibility and making travel difficult at times. Last week's storm dumped nearly a foot of snow. The city officials say the biggest challenge right now is the bitter cold, keeping roads icy and dangerous.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
As we watch world events unfold and fulfill Scripture, it's hard to believe anyone could doubt God and His Word are real, and yet there are so many who either question or completely refuse to believe it. The God Who Speaks is a 90-minute documentary that hits the doubt head-on with evidence that proves God is real and His Word is the ultimate authority. Watch it anytime and invite others to watch with you. Just visit stream.afa.net. That's stream.afa.net.
We inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to The Core here on American Family Radio. Glad to have you with us on the program. Live on this edition, brand new edition of At the Core. We had a wonderful time last night with our supporters in the Macon, Georgia area. And we had a dinner together and fellowship, updated them on the work of AFA and AFR. And so it was good to be with each and every one of you that visited with us in Macon, Georgia yesterday evening. And it's also good to be back home and back in the host chair. All right. John chapter 13 is where we are this week. Let's turn our attention to the scripture, and then we'll get into some of the news of the week. Plenty of that to talk about John chapter 13, verse 34 and 35, Jesus says, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, all will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another." That's verses 34 and 35. We can look at one's life and get a pretty good sense as to whether they are regenerated or not, whether they have the Holy Spirit, whether they're born again. We can look at the work and the fruit or the lack thereof in one's life and get a pretty good sense as to whether someone is born again. Now, ultimately, God is the is the only one that has full knowledge and visibility into the heart. He is the only one. He's the ultimate judge of the heart. And so we are somewhat limited in our capacity to examine others, but at a minimum, according to the Scripture, we can look at their fruit or the lack thereof and get a general sense as to whether they are walking in a manner worthy of the Lord. And so this commandment here that Jesus gives is just a very simple way not only to know how to honor God with our lives, that we love one another, Jesus says, as I have loved you, but we can also use this standard and this commandment to look at the lives of others and know whether or not they are walking in a manner worthy of the Lord. That's John chapter 13, verse 34 and 35. And as I said earlier in the week, it's very unfortunate, it's very sad, but this has been going on since Jesus' ministry on this earth, and really in the Old Testament, this has been going on in some sense even back then. But people profess, in the Old Testament, profess God, profess faith in God, but in the New Testament, looking at Jesus, faith in Jesus, and people professing faith in Jesus, but not truly having faith in Jesus. And there is so much of that going on today where people throw out their Christianity, they throw out their professed belief in Christ, but their life is just not lining up with anything of a believer. And some of it's more blatant than others. Some people put on a good front. But we should use discernment and look at the fruit or the lack thereof that people are bearing to know to some degree whether or not they are truly in the household of faith. And we can also look at what they're teaching. What they're teaching is what they're teaching in line with Scripture. Is it consistent with the Word of God, or is it at odds? That's a quick assessment that we can do as believers to, as the Scripture says, test the Spirit. All right, that's John chapter 13, verse 34 and 35. We're going to several places this year. Can't believe it's already 2026. We're going to Israel and Greece here in next month, but registration closed on that a long time ago. But we are going to the Holy Land, and we're going to walk the footsteps of Paul in Greece in March. But if you want to come on one of those, you're going to have to wait till 2027. I can't believe I'm saying 2027, but you'll have to wait till then to come again. Nonetheless, we are going to Boston, Washington, D.C., Williamsburg, Jamestown, Yorktown, and the Williamsburg, Jamestown, Yorktown, and the D.C. trip, those are in June and September. We go twice a year. And then the Boston trip is once a year. That's going to be at the end of September, right after the D.C. portion. And so if you want to join us on any of those three trips, so we go to Washington, that's a trip. We go to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, that's a trip, those three locations. And then we go to Boston, that's the third location. All of that's taking place in June and September of this year. So we would love to have you join us. You can go to wildmangroup.com to check out more information, wildmangroup.com to check out those tours, the dates, the pricing, and whether or not you want to go. And they're filling up fast. So if you do want to go, I would encourage you to register pretty soon. All right. Ketanji Brown Jackson was at the Grammys. And I don't know if maybe this is the first time a Supreme Court justice attended the Grammys. But this is why this is interesting, and I think very, very enlightening on where the Democrats stand and where their judicial appointments stand, is obviously she was supposedly being awarded for her audiobook, right? So that's why she was there. But that's really irrelevant at this point. The fact of the matter is she's a Supreme Court justice. And the Grammys it's a left-wing circus, all right? The Grammys for a long time has been woke, left-wing, anti-America, anti-Christianity for a long time. No surprise there. You know, I'm kind of over this perpetual annual outrage at the Grammys. What do you expect? I mean, it's like watching CNN. What do you expect? It's the Grammys, right? So if you don't want this garbage, if you don't want to listen to this garbage, just don't tune into it. I don't tune into it. Apparently half of America doesn't tune into it because their ratings are plummeting. I'm not even sure who watches the Grammys anymore. And what's funny is the young people don't watch it anymore. This used to be like for young wokesters, and they're not even watching the Grammys anymore. It's quite humorous. Apparently Nicki Minaj, her name was searched more during the Grammys, and she wasn't even there, than the Grammys itself, according to Google search results. It's just humorous when you look into it. But nonetheless, Ketanji Brown Jackson was there, and supposedly she stood and clapped during the anti-ICE statements by one of the actors. And this here it tells you where the Democrats are, okay? If you thought there was any semblance of moderation, decency, independence, objectivity, respect for the Constitution, respect for the institution, which is what the left always talks about, or any concern about, quote, democracy, which is a word they love to throw out, even though that's not what we have, folks. We have a representative, at best, we have a representative democracy and a constitutional republic within that. But they throw around this democracy thing, but our founders were actually explicitly against democracy as they describe it. But nonetheless, folks, the left is hijacked by the radicals, and they're not even hiding it. Having a Supreme Court justice attend the Grammys, and much less give a standing ovation during the anti-ICE speech, tells you all you need to know about where these people are. It tells you all you need to know about where these people are. They're not even pretending anymore. They're not even pretending anymore. And so you think to yourself, how can someone like this get on the court? I mean, someone that can't even tell us what a woman is, which was what she is known for at this point. How do they get there? I mean, how can you even possibly make it to the highest court in the land? Well, because the left doesn't have any standards anymore. Well, actually, I take that back. They do have standards. You have to be a left-wing Marxist radical to meet their standard. That is their standard, right? They don't have any good standards. Let me say that. They don't have any good standards. And so here we are. But this just, folks, if you just thought that we were at a place where we could reason with the other side, you're wrong. We're past that. You're naive. You're living in the 90s. You're actually probably living back in the 80s. This is not America of the 70s and 80s, folks. This is 2026, and the left is off the cliff. They're off the cliff. I'm tired of, we're not talking anymore about their going off the cliff. No, they're off the cliff. They're at the bottom of the cliff. All right? The left has no respect, no understanding, nothing for America, why she exists, why she was founded, why people bled and died for the Revolutionary War, why we have a Constitution, Bill of Rights, what is individual liberty, what are God-given rights. They don't care about any of that. This is about, for them, this is about man equals God. And we should have known this was coming during the Obama days at the DNC convention when they booed God. I mean, did we not kind of look at that and go, this isn't going to go well? But here we are, 70 million, approaching 70 million babies sacrificed at the Democrats' golden calf of abortion. They brought us the perversion of, quote, marriage through Obergefell, and the latest iteration of their godless agenda brought us child sexual mutilation. And so we look at this, and especially people who claim the name of Christ, what you folks would actually be surprised, maybe not because you listen to AFR, but some people would be surprised at the number of people that profess the name of Christ and vote for these left-wing radicals and vote for these God haters in the name of empathy or being, quote, never Trump. And it's really an unfortunate place that we are in. But this is why the Trump derangement syndrome falls on deaf ears. And I'm just telling you how it is. I'm not telling you this is how I wish it would be or this is how I wish it were. I'm just telling you how it is. The state that we're currently in. Reality check. The other side, who I call the left with a capital L, they are rabid God haters that want to crush, destroy, and discard of everything about this country that you and I would say we're proud about. And they will use any tool at their disposal, both legal and illegal, both constitutional and unconstitutional, both right and wrong. They will use any tool at their disposal to achieve their purposes. This sums up the Obama years and the Biden years. And of course, the Marxist agenda started well before that, but it was formally institutionalized in the office of the president under Obama and Biden. Marxism found a home in the Oval Office starting with Obama. And so if you want me to get upset about mean tweets or Trump said something not nice about somebody, okay, I don't like everything he does. But he's the first person since Reagan that actually gets elected and does what he says he's going to do. And so the elite in Washington and the God haters, they created a rather fervent yet cynical generation of people who wanted someone fresh to the scene. And that person was Donald J. Trump. And here we are in 2026.
Then Elisha prayed and said, "O Lord, please open his eyes that he may see." My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. One morning, Elisha's young servant went out first thing and saw the Syrian army surrounding Elisha's hometown. The servant was racked with fear and cried out to Elisha, "What will we do?" Elisha said, "Don't be afraid. There are more with us than are with them." Then Elisha prayed, "Lord, open this young man's eyes." The servant then saw the mountain full of horses and chariots of fire. As opposition mounts in our lives, fear not. The Lord who is in us and with us is greater than the hostility present in the world.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
We're in the financial business. We manage a couple of trusts and some estates and, of course, our own monies, too.
Courtney Trotter talks about the charitable gift annuity from the AFA Foundation.
I understand annuities about as much as anyone, I guess, can. So I just felt the charitable gift annuity was a win-win situation for many people that still are generating income and still have assets, because you never know when you may have to draw down on something like that. And if you don't ever have to, then it's even a better gift to get to a really good foundation like AFA, a very solid investment, a good way to help do the Lord's work, and it's there to help us as well.
Find out if the charitable gift annuity can work for you by calling the AFA Foundation at 800-326-4543, extension 345.
So you're scrolling through your social media newsfeed when you happen to run across a story about a bill that would remove safeguards that protect your kids from adult content online. You think, boy, it's a good thing I saw that. But then you realize the story is a week old and you missed the window to do anything. It's so frustrating, but it doesn't have to be. As an AFA insider, you'll stay up to date on the issues that are designed to destroy our families and our freedoms, and you won't have to spend hours online combing every corner of the internet for the latest developments. There's no more accidentally running across a story or overhearing enough of a story to pique your interest than leaving you wondering about the important details. You'll be the one in the know, and you'll be equipped to take action, helping keep our families and our freedoms safe. It's easy to become an AFA insider, so why not do it today? Visit afa.net/activism. afa.net/activism.
At the Core podcasts are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to the Core here on American Family Radio. Who knows what the future holds? Scripture says man actually doesn't know what the future holds. Man can act as if he does know what the future holds. The one thing we do know is that God is sovereign, and at some point, Jesus will return, and the whole earth will be judged. Those are facts that we do know. But as far as the workings of nations and leaders and things of that nature, man doesn't have knowledge of the future. We can guess what might happen, but we're not all knowing. And so where does our country go in all of this? Does it survive in the history books? How long does it survive? We're celebrating America's 250th anniversary this year. Quite amazing to be celebrating. But the divide in our country is stark, and it's up there, not probably, it definitely is up there with one of the probably top 3 or 4 most divided points in American history. I mean, we have obviously the Revolutionary War period, very divided, but that's a little bit early on, sometimes pre-Declaration of Independence. And then you have obviously the Civil War stands out, very, very tragic and divided period in our nation's history. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives lost here on our own soil. And then we have what this is, which is not a traditional civil war, but in some ways it is, right? I mean, blood has been shed for the political and cultural cause in America, not widespread, but violence has taken place in the last decade over the ideological divide in our country, thankfully not widespread, as I mentioned. But, you just wonder, do we keep as a nation duking it out, if you will? Or, I'm talking about electing, good people, and then bad people get back in charge, and then good people get back in charge, this kind of back and forth, if you will, this tug of war. Does this keep going on? Do we have a Gavin Newsom, next presidency, and then you get a J.D. Vance back in the White House? I mean, what does that look like? Because the two sides are so divided. It'll be quite interesting to see how this plays out in the history books. But to give you just another drop in the bucket of where the other side stands, Kathy Griffin, she's no saint. Anybody who kept up with her very vile and graphic depiction of President Trump decapitated knows that she's not wearing a white robe. Kathy Griffin, more recently, she's very well known for her left-wing rhetoric, and she's hardcore, never Trump, fill in the blank. But she just decided it would be a good idea to talk about all the ways that she should collect the names and addresses of her MAGA neighbors and that we should track them down and we should defund ICE and abolish immigration enforcement officers. I mean, all the left-wing talking points you can imagine. But it just gives you a glimpse into how these folks think and how they view people like you and I, their neighbors. This is clip one.
Kathy Griffin tells fans to find out which neighbors are MAGA and organize anti-ICE groups. Yeah, that's right, because the Minnesotans are doing it the way that we should, and they are using WhatsApp, and they're using code names, and they're organizing because some of these ICE guys are starting to infiltrate the liberal groups that are bringing food to families that are brown, and so it's not safe for them to even leave their house. Imagine that. That's the world we're living in. And there is a state in the United States that is currently occupied, but ICE is everywhere. I just want to remind you. And so I am going to get to know my neighbors better. And yes, I have to know who's MAGA and who isn't, because it's two teams now, you guys. You're either with all these deportations and this violence and this murder and this bizarre government agency that's only been around since 2003, and it could be abolished, like not with this particular Congress. So don't get too mad at your Democratic representatives because we're in the minority. I don't know how many times I have to say that. We cannot pass a bill. We are in the minority. But I do want the representatives to be louder, be loud, and be talking about this nonstop. And I wish the news anchors would be louder because this is a 5-alarm fire.
All right, the Democrats. This just dawned on me, and I'm going to give half. I'm going to give half of the Democrat Party a break here. The people like Kathy Griffin, which these are the figureheads of the Democrat Party, right? These are the cheerleaders. These are the folks who get you pumped up at the pep rally for the Democrat Party. Honestly, they're creating perpetual victims here, right? I mean, the voting. Let me tell you who the victims are of the Democrat Party leadership. They're voters. Of course, you and I are too, but they're voters. They're voters. The folks that listen to Kathy Griffin and go, yeah, she's right. Those are the victims here, okay? Along with everybody else that has to live under this insanity that the Democrats foster or foist on America. Folks, these people don't have credibility, okay? And this is at least something that not all, but most Republicans at least have some semblance of living a normal, moderate life, and they've lived in the real world. They at least know how things work. But let me give you a little background on Kathy Griffin, because she's talking about, I'm going to start getting to know my neighbors so I can make sure they're not MAGA. Oh, really? You live in Malibu, California, okay? So you live in a Democrat stronghold, well-to-do Malibu, California, where the average listing price for a home in her neighborhood specifically is $3 million, okay, with some of them selling for $6 million, all right? So I can go ahead and tell you there's probably not any MAGA folks living in Malibu, California, specifically in Kathy Griffin's neighborhood. They don't, this is the thing, these Democrat figureheads, they don't hang out with us. They don't even hang out with their own voters. So the impoverished, the self-impoverished, left-wing Marxist Antifa rioters, looters, and anarchists that are currently in Minnesota, they're there on a temporary visa because they don't live there, right? They're there temporarily at the orders and the direction of the Democrat Party to impede ICE. These Democrat leaders and figureheads and media talking heads, they don't even live with or hang out with their own voting base. Like at least Trump, the multi-billionaire, at least he does rallies and gives his own voters high fives and then serves at the McDonald's window and then drives the dumpster truck, okay? So at least he pretends to be relatable, right? And to hang out with the common folk for a little while. J.D. Vance legit comes from lower income, middle class Ohio, all right? So he's got credentials. He's got street cred, as they call it. But you talk about Kathy Griffin, and now even AOC. Like, AOC doesn't even hang out in the Bronx anymore. She doesn't even pretend to. Or Brooklyn, or whatever her district is, right, in New York. She doesn't, once they ascend to the elite status of Washington, D.C., or hosting a show on CNN, they don't step foot with you and I anymore. They don't even know what it's like. They're getting chauffeured around. They're having, fancy parties, fancy tea parties, fancy cocktail parties. They're all hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein back 15 years ago. And they can't relate to us. So Kathy Griffin talking like she's, on the streets with Antifa and, she knows what's going on the ground. No, you don't. You're reading stuff. You're probably using Elon Musk X platform to figure out what's going on. Which, how hypocritical is that, right? I thought they didn't like Musk, but they use his platform to figure out what's going on. They're so out of touch. And I just hope at some point, I'm really optimistic, that there's a subset of Democrat voters, they're locked in on this. These are the folks that are up there. They're brainwashed. They think Trump is a Nazi. They're going to do whatever they have to do, even if it means laying their life on the line for the Democrat Party, because they think it's a righteous religious cause. But the rest of the country out there they haven't lost their mind, at some point they've got to figure out that the Democrats really aren't the party of anybody other than themselves. I mean, this is the most self-serving political party apparatus that I've ever seen. It's all about themselves, and it's all about power. And it's all about looting the treasury and our tax dollars for their purpose. And every time they open their mouth, they prove it. Speaking of Washington, D.C. and self-serving, Chip Roy over in the House of Representatives and Speaker Johnson as well, they passed this SAVE Act, which does a couple things on federal elections, but the most important thing it does is it prevents non-citizens from voting. All right, that's the SAVE Act. President Trump has come out in favor of it. It's got a lot of momentum, as a matter of fact, and it's passed the House of Representatives. It's pending a vote over in the U.S. Senate. But I want to play this CNN clip. This is about a 30-second clip at the number of people that are actually in favor of voter ID. This is clip 4.
Take a look here. Favor photo ID to vote. 85% of white people favor it. 82% of Latino. 76% of Black Americans favor it. So the bottom line is this. Voter ID is not controversial in this country. A photo ID to vote is not controversial in this country. It is not controversial by party, and it is not controversial by race. The vast majority of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj that, in fact, you should have a photo ID to be able to vote. So something, no.
Whoa, folks, we got Nicki Minaj weighing in on the policy. I love it. I like it. I think it's good to have a fresh voice in the conversation. And she's got a lot of influence among young voters. But there you have it. I mean, over 70% in every category, in every demographic, over 70% of folks are in favor of photo ID. And I read a post the other day, and it was talking about you go to the pharmacy, and yet some of this over-the-counter stuff you've got to pull out an ID for. Like if you want Sudafed, you got to pull out your ID. If you buy too much of one of these over-the-counter drugs, they're going to be sending it over to, DEA? And they're going to be flagging you thinking you've got like a meth shop in your house if you've got a really bad cold. But we want to go vote for who runs the free world, and that's controversial to pull out our ID. I mean, everything we do, we have to pull out an ID for, including attending the Democrat National Convention. Imagine that. Yep, you've got to pull out an ID to go to the DNC every 4 years when they have their presidential convention. And I'll tell you another thing. I'll almost guarantee you 100% you had to pull out an ID to go to the Grammys so you could hang out with Ketanji Brown Jackson. I'll almost guarantee it. There's no way they're letting people in the Grammys without their ID. And so 70+% of the country and 85% in some categories completely agree with voter ID. It's already passed the House of Representatives. Here's what's going on in the U.S. Senate. Senator John Thune signaled some willingness to bring this up. He actually signaled some willingness to bring it up and force U.S. senators to actually participate in a talking filibuster, all right? And here's the conclusion I've come to, because we have these two competing ideas going on. We have what they've been calling, and I've called on numerous occasions, the filibuster. I'm here today to admit that I've been calling it the wrong thing, all right? I've come to the conclusion after 10 years of covering Washington, D.C. Circus, and as I call it, the biggest pillow fight in the world where nobody gets injured. It's not a filibuster, okay? What they're doing now and what they have been doing for some time, going back probably 30 years, is not a filibuster. And so calling it a filibuster is either you don't know the definition of filibuster, or you're just taking their word for it, or you're misleading people. One of the three. But what's going on in Washington by needing a 60-vote threshold to pass legislative items in Washington, D.C., what is causing that is not a filibuster. It's a rule, okay? It's called the cloture rule, where you need 61 votes to end debate, all right? 61 votes to end debate. But what if there is no debate? Well, then you're not ending debate. You're effectively putting up a maneuver, a rule, to make it to where you can't pass anything in the U.S. Senate without 61 votes, okay? So you can say, well, you need 61 to end debate and then 51 to pass the bill. No. You need 61 to do anything, all right, is basically, because you can't get to the bill vote without ending debate, without filing cloture, which is 61 votes, okay? So it's a charade. They're just doing a shell game and making people think that you need a simple majority, but you don't. You can't do anything without 61. So the simple majority is just for show. So it's not a filibuster, and it hasn't been the last 30 years because nobody talks. A filibuster, by definition, according to the Senate rules and tradition, you actually got to have somebody talking, right? They're filibustering. That's the definition. But instead, the Senate has been operating under the 61-vote rule. You can't pass any bill through the Senate unless you have 61 votes. And it's a tragedy. It's very sad. It's very disappointing. It means you've got to have, in this instance, at least 7 or 8 Democrats agree to something before you can pass it. So the majority party is really not the majority party. As unfortunate as that is, the majority party isn't really the majority party. They're not. They're only the majority party on maybe judicial nominations or cabinet picks, where you need 51 votes and you can bypass the 61-vote rule. So that's what's going on in the U.S. Senate, and the SAVE Act is currently stalled. We'll be back in a few.
The American Family Association's mission is to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of our culture. We also support the church. Our goal is to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. AFA believes that all men and women, whether in private or public, should be free to exercise their faith without hindrance from the government.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association.
When you hear this is American Family News.
You know what follows is the truth. Your news from a Christian perspective.
Hundreds of teachers are going to have to walk into that school building, and they are forced to swallow political ideology that in many cases violates their very faith and conscience.
If you miss it at the top of the hour, American Family News podcasts are available at afn.net. And sign up for our daily news brief at afn.net.
Maybe this is you too. There's enormous frustration right now with healthcare costs. It is amazing. Healthcare costs for families in the last 20 years have almost tripled, and it just keeps getting worse. All this to say, this is why MediShare is so in demand right now. People are looking for alternatives, And Medi-Share is proven. You can save thousands of dollars a year and actually like it more. Over 1 million Americans are now part of healthcare sharing, and Medi-Share is the gold standard. It's trusted, it works. It's been helping people save money and have peace of mind now for 30 plus years. It's not some big impersonal thing either. It's a community of people like you helping each other. So yeah, if you're frustrated too, here's your chance to make a refreshing change. You'll notice the difference as soon as you call. They're easy to talk to. You can get a price within 2 minutes. Here is the number. Call 833-44-BIBLE. That's 833-44-BIBLE. 833-44-BIBLE.
I'm Rick Scarborough, and this is my take. A Venezuelan official is claiming that 100 people were killed in the U.S. operation to capture President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. According to Reuters, Venezuela's Interior Minister Cabello claims that Venezuela's army posted a list of 23 names of dead soldiers killed in the attack. Cabello added that Maduro suffered a leg injury during the capture, while his wife sustained a head injury. An administration official told Fox Digital News on Tuesday that 7 U.S. service members were injured in the operation. The fact that the extremely complex and grueling mission was successfully executed with so few injuries is a testament to the expertise of our warriors. The mission was led by Army's elite Special Operations Delta Force. President Trump is keeping his word to keep America safe. All Americans should be thankful for his courage and his actions. I'm Rick Scarborough, and that's my take.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Walker Wildmon.
Welcome back to The Core here on American Family Radio. The show is hosted each week by Rick Green and myself, and it's good to be with you on this brand new edition of the program. Joining us now is my colleague and obviously good friend of the ministry, Debbie Wuthnow, president of iVoterGuide, also a vice president over at our government affairs affiliate, AFA Action. Debbie's with us now because we are officially, and have been for some time, in midterm season. Debbie, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Walker.
Debbie, you and I were talking, and I think I agreed we need to have you on regularly, at a minimum during these election cycles, because there's so much to talk about. You've got hundreds of races all around the country. You can't possibly do justice just a couple of times a year talking about the iVoterGuide on the show. And so that's why we had you on today. And of course, we're going to hopefully have you on every month between now and November. But before we jump into a couple of these U.S. Senate races that are going to be very interesting to watch, and then of course there's House races, U.S. House races all around the country in all 50 states that are being voted on, both primary and then general election. But before we get into all that, tell people who are maybe new to AFR, new to iVoterGuide, what makes iVoterGuide so credible.
Well, for those who don't know, iVoterGuide is a voter guide, but it's not, if you've never seen it before, it's not something you've ever seen anything like it. It's very data-driven. It's a deep dive of research on every candidate that we evaluate, what they've done with their money, who they've given money to as an individual, as well as who supports their campaign. Gosh, if they've ever held office, we have their scorecards from both liberal and conservative groups. We have endorsements from both liberal and conservative endorsers. We have all kinds of independent research, obviously a questionnaire. And then what's really unique about iVoterGuide, Walker, is that we have this army of about 1,000 volunteers who comb through all that data, read the candidate's website, read their social media, and then we rate every candidate. So it's not just where the candidate stands on 4 or 5 issues that are important to conservatives. It's a rating on the political philosophy that's looking at all of the issues important to all voters, and including their worldview and their values, because we'd really like to have conservatives, but I'd like even more to have biblical candidates that we elect. And it's personalized, so the vote is real easy to use. You just go to iVoterGuide.com, you enter your address, and you see the candidates and races that are on just your ballot.
Yeah, and in our experience talking with people, once they use iVoterGuide and the website is easy to navigate, it's very self-explanatory. On the homepage, you can key in your physical address, your voting address, and your state, and your personalized ballot will pull up, as you mentioned. We even have a map where you can just click on your state. Everything in your state will pull up. Either way, Obviously, keying in your voting address is the most accurate thing to do. But nonetheless, anybody that uses this, they're hooked on it. They go back to it every election cycle just because it makes everyone's life easy. And that's what we aim to do, is make their life easy, make it to where they don't have to spend hours researching candidates. We do all the hard work, and they can look at this for 10 or 15 minutes up and down the ballot and kind of figure out where they are on who they choose to vote for. Debbie, this is obviously a midterm year. Historically, the presidential party doesn't do well during midterms year. I think in recent history, since the 50s, the only two presidents to defy that trend was President Clinton. During one midterm, President Clinton was able to retain the Democrats' control of the House and Senate. And then President Bush, after 9/11, was able to retain the House and the Senate. Those are the only two instances, at least in the last 50, 60 years, where this kind of trend has been diverted. So that'll be interesting to see how President Trump's party, how the Republicans hold up during the midterms. Let's talk a couple elections for U.S. Senate. There's so many House races, it would be hard to just try to pick which one to pick to cover. But in Georgia, U.S. Senator John Ossoff is the current Democrat senator there from Georgia, and he's up for re-election. Georgia typically is a red state, although obviously it's chosen Democrats a couple of times. But that's an opportunity for a Republican to pick that up, right?
It is definitely an opportunity. If you remember back to when John Ossoff was elected, it was in that disastrous 2020 runoff election where he got in. So, it was honestly, they think, the discouragement of the rural Republican voters who didn't turn out. And it was such a narrow margin that it should be an opportunity to pick up, but we still need to know who the candidate is. And that's going to be determined in the primary. Yep,
that's right. That primary is May 19th, according to iVoterGuide's website. May 19th, obviously, of this year, is that primary election to determine who the Republican and Democrat candidates are. Obviously, Ossoff will most likely keep the Democrat nominee since he's the incumbent there. But as far as the Republican side, it could be anyone. But we'll know pretty soon. We'll know in May who that Republican nominee is.
By the filing date's March 1st, so we'll at least know, in 3 weeks who's going to be on the ballot. Right now, it's just a bunch of speculation. There are several who have already filed to run. So we know that Mike Collins has filed. He's currently a congressman out of Georgia. We know that Buddy Carter, another Georgia congressman, has filed, and the name Derek Dooley is a football coach name. So those are the three that I think are the ones being talked about the most. But we'll see who else throws their name in the hat.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to watch. I think Republicans have to pick that up. I mean, I think it would be a missed opportunity for the Republican Party if they did not pick back up the Georgia Senate seat. And that would just give them one of the two seats, because Raphael Warnock is still the U.S. Senator, Democrat as well, from Georgia, not up for election this cycle. So, but to have two Democrats, senators from Georgia is pretty unlikely, at least in the last 10 or 15 years. North Carolina is another state that's going to be interesting to watch. This is currently a Republican seat with Senator Thom Tillis. He's retiring. Democrats have fought for North Carolina, both during the Hillary Clinton election and then when President Trump ran against Biden and Kamala Harris on the two separate occasions. The Democrats have tried and tried and tried to get North Carolina. Now, President Trump has won it consistently, but they have a Democrat governor. So Democrats
and they have
they've proven they can win in North Carolina. So tell us about that race.
Well, you're painting the picture very well, that they've had been a Republican presidential state. Used to be, they're still kind of in the swing. They're not solid. It's still a battleground, but they can't seem to get a Republican governor elected. So the challenge that's going to be is that it's an open seat, which means the Republicans are there's going to be a crazy primary with lots of people in there. We can talk about some of the specifics of who is running. But on the Democratic side, they've got a former Democratic governor that is running for senator. So he's already proven he can be elected statewide. He's already got name ID. That is going to be one of the toughest races. And I've even heard maybe one of the most expensive races in the nation, hundreds of millions of dollars for that Senate seat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that's another one that Republicans, the pressures is on the Republicans to keep that seat, because it has been, at least on the congressional side, a fairly red state, if you will. Let's see. Michigan has been trending blue for some time. President Trump did win it because he won all of the battleground states, and Michigan's one of those. But Michigan obviously has Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Democrat. But the U.S. Senator there currently, Gary Peters, he's retiring. He's a Democrat. I would view this as an opportunity, although I'm not too optimistic here, just because the Democrats have held Michigan for some time now when it comes to statewide office.
Well, the only potential glimmer of hope is the Republican candidate ran last time for Senate, and I believe came very close. So he's shown that he's got the work ethic, he's got some name ID in there. I think it's going to be a key state for the Republicans to really throw some attention at. And if it's possible to tighten down some of the election integrity there, that would certainly be helpful in Michigan. But it's going to be another race to watch. Again, it's not till the end of summer, so there's a lot of things that can happen between now and then. But it is one of the top 10 races to watch for Senate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Debbie, explain the importance of the primary, because obviously November gets everybody's attention, record levels of turnout compared to the primary in November. But in a lot of these races, actually, the vast majority of these races you and I are talking about, especially on the congressional side with the House, they're chosen during the primary, right?
Well, exactly. Out of the 435 House seats, there's 3 dozen really that could go one way or the other in November. So for the remainder of those almost 400 races, they are either safely Republican or safely Democrat. So the only real opportunity for change is in that party primary. The ones we're going to be paying the closest attention to is especially those Republican open congressional seats, to see if we can, who's going to run for those. And for those districts, maybe where we have Republicans that aren't as solid on our family faith issues as we would like, those are the primaries where it's key that you turn out. It's in those areas, it's really the only opportunity to move the needle to the conservative side. And so the party primary, typically only about 20% of voters turn out and vote, but yet you're impacting 90% of races because they're not really determined in November. So it's really key to vote and to know where those candidates stand. And iVoterGuide is there to help you to determine and find the candidate that represents you best.
Excellent. Well, I can't recommend it enough. iVoterGuide.com. As Debbie mentioned early on, there's nothing else like it. We cover a ton, hundreds, even thousands of races all around the country, are hundreds of races, thousands of candidates. Debbie knows all the numbers.
Actually, no, it's over 5,000 races and almost 15,000 candidates.
There you go. I knew it was in the thousands. And so, but it's so expansive. You may look at some of these state organizations that cover some state elections, but iVoterGuide covers elections in all 50 states from a federal standpoint. And then we get into Debbie, over 35 statewide and
almost
state
40
house.
40 states with statewide races, 32 states with state legislative races. There will be dozens of states where we're covering ballot measures. There will be some really key abortion and election integrity, citizenship voting ballot measures this fall. We're covering school board races in an increasing number of states right now in Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Texas, even in the March election. So get your personalized voter guide and vote in every race, in every election, and do so wisely.
Excellent, Debbie. Thanks so much for coming on, and we'll have you back on soon.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely. That's Debbie Wuthnow, president of iVoterGuide, the most comprehensive voter guide in the country, and it's looking at the issues you care about as AFR listeners, the issues you care about. Where do the candidates stand on faith? Where do they stand on worldview? Where do they stand on our founding fathers, on the Constitution? Where do they stand on the life issue, religious freedom, marriage and family, all the major issues that you care about We examine these candidates from that perspective, and then we publish our findings and let you make a decision on which candidate most likely fits your worldview. You know, I understand why the left views iVoterGuide. Number one, they view it as a threat. The left also views iVoterGuide as kind of a conservative voter guide, which I can easily understand why you would view it that way. But if we're being honest, when you look at iVoterGuide's research and their findings, it's very honest. It's actually pretty bipartisan. I mean, Senator Elizabeth Warren, for example, is going to get probably, I haven't looked, but at her recent evaluation, but she's probably going to get verified liberal, which who would disagree that Senator Elizabeth Warren is verified liberal? She is. Look at her voting record. She's hard left, right? And so it's just simply compiling the data, putting it all in one location, and telling you where these elected officials stand. And it looks at their voting record, who gives them money, who's financing their campaigns, which both Democrats and Republican voters should care about that. And so it's a very useful tool. I actually personally think Democrats could probably look at iVoterGuide and learn some stuff. I think you'd be surprised how valuable iVoterGuide is just from a nonpartisan perspective. A lot of data, a lot of information, all compiled, dropped into one centralized location, and it's personalized for every voter. That's iVoterGuide.com. iVoterGuide.com. Go there and check it out. President Trump said he's going to campaign like it's a presidential cycle. President Trump and the White House, Susie Wiles, said they are going to hit the campaign trail as if President Trump is on the ballot. And I do not doubt them 1 minute. I think he will. I think he understands, the president and the White House, they understand. Even if it's by a slim margin, they need to keep the House of Representatives. They just really do. What does keeping the House of Representatives do? Two fundamental things, don't miss this. It keeps control of the budgetary talks and the budgetary processes. And it also fends off any impeachment and investigative charades that the Democrats want to launch. So keeping the House, folks, it does matter. It does matter for continuing to advance the America First agenda.